Welcome to the Homeschool High School Podcast, brought to you by Seven Sisters Homeschool.com and the Ultimate Homeschool Podcast Network. I'm Vicki, and I am so excited because I met a new friend with the most awesome program and resource that is going to be helpful to some of our teens. So this is Tara Giddings from Learn Up Centers, and she works with, and her team work with teens who are needing to bring their reading up, that they've struggled with reading. And so it's not anything to be ashamed of. It's a growth orientation that we all homeschoolers have. So Tara, I was so excited when I looked at your resources, and you and I talked a little bit ahead of time a few weeks ago. Would you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you discovered us homeschoolers, and just about what you are doing with Learn Up?
Of course. Well, first off, thank you so much for having me. I am always excited to connect with more educators, excited to connect with the homeschool community more, and find more ways to help our struggling readers out there.
Yeah.
All right. So a little bit about LearnUp. We are a nonprofit that has been around for 10 years now, and we are on a mission to help all kids learn how to read. So we work with readers of all ages and all grades, and we have a program specifically set up to support our teen learners. We support students using our proven structured literacy program, and we offer high dosage tutoring for students both in San Francisco in person and virtually all over the nation.
I am so interested in that. We did not discuss this ahead of time, but it just jumped out. Sorry, Tara.
No worries.
It's a nonprofit. Why did you choose a nonprofit rather than a corporation?
Great question. So our reading program, when it was initially created, came out of a family who had a student who was in 5th grade and was reading at below a 2nd grade level. And this was a family who had all the resources in the world to help their kid. They had put them through so many different programs and nothing was working. And so the family was feeling really frustrated. What do we do? How can we help our kid learn how to read? And they found someone named Steve Tatum, who is the founder of our reading program, Tatum Reading. And he worked with this kid and he got him moving from 2nd grade level to high school level in less than a year. And the family went, oh my gosh, how did you do that? No one else has been able to do that. And so Steve T sat down with this family and walked them through what he does. And he had created this structured literacy reading program based on learning to be a train the trainer in about 5 different OG-based programs. And what he found when he became a train the trainer to help train his own staff in the best methods of reading support is that all these reading programs out there had different elements that they did really well, but they didn't communicate with one another. And so he took what he found to be the best elements of each of these programs and combined them together to move students as quickly as possible, because we know, especially for our middle and high schoolers, they don't have time to waste. They need to catch up fast. So he created a program that moved fast and was engaging for students, and one that we know works really well, not only with any student, but with those teens.
That is so excited. And they chose, when they kicked this off, to serve other students, to do it in a nonprofit format.
Exactly. And so they did this because while they had the resources to help their students, after talking to Steve T and learning about his program, they wanted to share this to as many students as possible. And they wanted it to be accessible for families who may not otherwise be able to afford these services, because we know that education is such an important key to unlocking success in the future. And we want to make sure that students, regardless of their socioeconomic background, have the same opportunities.
And reading is the key. So
exactly.
It just, anyway, warms my heart. These are good people that are helping young people launch in life with the tools they need. So thank you guys for making Learn Up happen. All righty. All right. So now we know these are good people and they're helping all kinds of young people get their reading skills they need and have a track record of success. So Tara, tell us about what y'all are doing with high schoolers, because like you said, like they're getting ready to launch and they want to launch with the skills they need. So what does Learn Up do? Because not all programs are specifically geared like this is for teens. So tell us about that.
Exactly. So we've been working with teens for the whole time LearnUp's been around, and we know that our program can work with those kids. But we kept getting questions like, do you work with teens? And we thought about it. We need to make sure we're really clear about what we do differently when we work with teens. So we made an adaptation of our curriculum called Unlocking Reading Success, specifically for those older students. And what we did is we talked with our tutors and we looked at what adaptations do we make to phonics concepts to make them approachable so that they're still engaging and story driven so that you can make sense of these weird phonics rules, but so that they don't feel babyish and kids don't feel like they're being talked down to.
Yes.
So we looked at our more mature approaches to phonics and we looked at our youth development because we also know that the way we work with and interact with teens is different than how we work with younger students. We need to get that student buy-in and engagement so they can work and see themselves as readers. And we need to make sure that they're treated with the kind of respect that you would give to an adult and not be talked down to like a little kid.
Yes. Yeah. So let's say we've got a parent and they're homeschooling their young person, and their young person is the most awesome teen, but they are still struggling with reading. So they go, oh, there's some hope here. So if a parent contacts LearnUp, what will the program do with the teen? Like, how do they get connected, and what will happen if they get started working with LearnUp?
Great question. So the first step is always going to be our free intake assessment. So we want to make sure that all families can get insight into their students' reading that comes not necessarily from a school district, that comes from somewhere new and approachable. So we offer a free intake assessment. It's only 20 minutes and it can be done virtually anywhere. We'll set up the family with one of our great advanced tutors and they'll go through that 20-minute intake. And after that, we'll be able to tell them about their students' entry level. And our entry levels are part of how we're able to move our teens more quickly through the program. Because we don't start at the beginning of our scope and sequence with every single student. We want to meet them where they are. We know that these students are coming to us with background knowledge. They're not empty vessels, and we want to build on the skills they have so that they're engaged and can move more quickly. So we find students tend to bucket into about 5 different entry levels, ranging from a non-reader who just knows some sounds, an early reader who can read some one-syllable words, needs those foundational skills, and then we have our what we call start 3s and 4s. And these are students who come to us with more skills, who just need support on syllable division to read multi-syllable words. And so what we would do if the student came to us and their intake showed that they were what we call an entry-level start 4, we would start them in tutoring at more advanced phonics so the student feels challenged. And then we would go back and fill in the gaps in their reading as needed so that we're not reteaching anything. And then if we have a student who comes to us at the last start I haven't mentioned yet, which is an entry level of a student who sounds like they can read, but when you ask them what they read, they can't tell you because they need that support on comprehension and writing. And likely they have some decoding gaps as well that they need filled in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that is so common, that especially at that age. Like they've got some skills, but the decoding and the comprehension is sometimes a little fuzzy. So, all right. So if they went ahead and did an assessment, a tutor works with them through the assessment. Is that right? So they.
Yeah, so a tutor works with them for about 20 minutes to get a good sense of where we would start them in our program and, you know, what phonics concepts they might need support on, what syllable words they can read, and does some baseline assessments because we are a very data-driven program and we would want students to continue to be assessed throughout their time in the program.
That is really cool. And so they say, oh, this sounds so hopeful. Let's sign up for LearnUp program. All right. So what then would a session look like? So they work with a tutor. Is that right?
Yes.
Right. What would a session look like?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, after that intake, receiving the report, and then connecting with LearnUp to schedule with a tutor. During each session, we use a multisensory interactive phonics board, and we have a virtual version of this as well, so the student can, use the visual aids and the auditory aids of listening to the sound. And they would go through the sounds that they already know for review at the start. Then they would learn a new phonics concepts of the day, and then practice that using what we call nonsense words, so that they're really challenged to apply that new phonics concept. They would do that on the board, switching between the tutor putting words out and the student putting words out. Then they would practice some spelling with real words, and then they would move into reading. And so what we know is really important, and what we do that's a little special about our program, is we spend half the time actually reading in a decodable book. And this book uses whatever phonics concept the student learned that day to reinforce it, so that they're practicing in a real storybook environment. And that gives them the opportunity to also practice comprehension and engaging with the text. So they're not just focused on decoding, but really on reading. And that gives them the opportunity to be prepared for when they're reading things for school or for fun, hopefully, to understand what they're reading and not just have to worry about that decoding piece.
So they're in a supportive environment where they're already in the zone with skills, doing some reading with the tutor support. So,
Yes.
and the thing that I really appreciate, and said it already, but it's so important, the books they're reading with the tutor are things that would be meaningful to a teen.
Yes, exactly. So we have a variety of book series, and they'll start at what might be a first grade decodable level, but it's going to look like a chapter book that a teen would read, and it's going to have more complex characters and themes and plots, so that they don't feel like they're reading an incredibly boring book made for little kids.
Yeah, because we do not want to insult our teens. Like, they are humans who are growing and becoming, and so they need to have the feeling of respect in a tutoring situation. So
Yes,
that is
exactly.
absolutely lovely. What are some of the successes that you guys have seen working with teens? Can you pull anything off the top of your head of data or specific stories?
Yeah, definitely. So this just made me think about a student who we worked with at a high school. And this was what some of the high school staff referred to as a hall walker. So the kid who technically is at school, but they're never spending any time in class. They're just walking around the hallways the whole time. And
Yeah.
typically that's because it's an avoidance technique.
Mm-hmm.
It's something where the student knows they can't engage in class.
Mm-hmm.
And so we worked with this student who was an early reader, just able to read some one-syllable words, but in high school. And what we found was that over 60 sessions that we had with them in that semester, we were able to get them up a little over 3 grade levels of increasing text, so that they were able to read at about a end of 4th, 5th grade levels, and so they could start to connect to what they had to read in class. And that student ended up attending class on a regular basis after being in LearnUp, and became engaged in asking questions, and could get support from their teachers in order to complete all the assignments they needed, because they had those base skills.
I tell you yeah, the hall walker was using really good avoidance skills. I mean,
Yes.
a highly skilled young person. But what he really wanted was to be able to read and to be functioning academically with his peers and not have to hide in the hallway. And sometimes our teens, any teen will do avoidance behaviors if they're feeling shame and they can't figure out a way to go forward. So if we've got a struggling reader and you don't know what to do and you're seeing some avoidance, maybe we should talk to LearnUp. So I think that would be a good place to start. And the assessment, you guys, doesn't cost any money, right? Like, it's a
Right.
free
It is,
assessment.
yes, it is totally free. Just an opportunity for families to know more about their students' reading, and no requirement to enroll.
So there's no risk in finding out if this would be a good connection for our teens. So, all right, I'm excited about this because I care about teens. So, Tara, would you tell our families how to get connected with LearnUp?
Yes, you can email Learn to Read at learnupcenters.org. That is our main email. And you can also call our main phone number, which is 415 944 7323.
That is awesome. And what I am going to do is for those who are watching YouTube, in the comments, there will be links that you guys can use to get connected. And on the podcast, it will be in the show notes because we want to help our kids to launch with confidence and success. So Tara, thank you. Any other things that you would like our families to know?
Yeah, last thing, I talked a little bit about our books, but one thing I haven't mentioned that is that we also wrote a brand new series for teens, and this is written by our staff. And so this series is very culturally relevant. It uses, tales that these staff members grew up learning from their families, and it ranges from Japanese mythology to African American folklore. And they're really cool books. I would read them just for fun. And students are loving them. And it gives students an opportunity to see themselves in the book wherever they're from.
Okay, all right. Now, one thing us homeschoolers we love to do is do something culturally relevant because then we can count some of that time not just for reading for ELA, but also for our history or geography. So
Mm-hmm.
that would count. That's really
Yes,
cool. And it would be really interesting too. I
definitely.
am just really excited about this. And I, because really, really, our teens who are avoidant and they want the skills and they're getting ready to live life, if they can read, they will do so much better. So thank you so, so much. Yeah. All right. Well, Tara, Learn Up Centers is a blessing to people who are already working with you guys. And anybody here who wants to work digitally with a tutor at Learn Up and with the cool books, get in contact with them. So, all righty.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for this opportunity. And also for any parents who are interested in learning about teaching themselves, we also offer trainings, and that could be a great chance for a homeschool parent to teach their student one-on-one.
That is even better. So teachers, our homeschool mom teachers or dad teachers
Yes.
can gain some skills themselves. Oh, you guys are awesome. All right. Well, this has been the Homeschool High School Podcast brought to you by Seven Sisters Homeschool.com and the Ultimate Homeschool Podcast Network. Thank you to Seth Tillman for editing, and thank you, Tara, for joining us. And we will see everybody next week.
So thank you so much for having